together in the ballroom. How's everyone's day so far? How's it all? That's good. So our renowned speaker today is a woman of many firsts.
See, she is the first person from Iran to ever travel in space. She is the first female private space explorer, and she is a personal hero of mine. Anusha Ansari immigrated to the United States as a teenager and earned her bachelor's degree in electronic and computer engineering from George Mason University. She then went on to receive a master's degree in electrical engineering from George Washington University and was given an honorary doctorate from the International Space University. She is currently pursuing a master's degree in astronomy from Swinburne University. She is a serial entrepreneur who has made a number of amazing companies and projects that have an extreme impact on the world in an amazing global scale. She is the co-founder of Pradya Systems and the current CEO of XPRIZE. To help drive the commercialization of space and space industry and industries benefiting people around the world, Anusha and her family have provided the title sponsorship for the Ansari X Prize, which is a $10 million cash award to the first non-governmental organization to launch a reusable manned spacecraft into space within 2 weeks. Anusha has received numerous honors, including the World Economic Forum Young Global Leader, the Working Women's National Entrepreneurial Excellence Award, George Mason University's Entrepreneurial Excellence Award, the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year, and she's also, in her company, Telecom Technologies, earned recognition in Inc. magazine's 500 fastest growing companies. As I had the pleasure to share with you this morning, I had the honor of meeting Anusha as an 8th grade kid, and just getting to hear her speak, inspiring me a desire to explore, and is what led me to a path of science and a path of astronomy, and eventually led to this conference today. I'm so excited to have gotten to reconnect with her after all these years, thanks to the Brooke Owens Fellowship, where she is my mentor through an aerospace fellowship program. Please join me in welcoming Anusha Ansari.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Anna. I am so delighted to have been invited by Anna to this conference because not only I got to reconnect with her, but I got to start meeting some amazing people in this conference, speakers that have been speaking throughout the multiple sessions and sharing their stories of their path to science and their involvement with this conference. I'm inspired because, and humbled, to be honest with you, by the type of people and stories that Anna attracts around her and helps create environments for us, spaces for us to tell our stories to each other and encourage each other and inspire each other. So it's wonderful to be here. And my presentation is my story, and hope to share it with you and what drives me, what I'm passionate about, and what I'm doing today. I was born a long, long time ago in a country far, far away in Mashhad, Iran. Growing up, I was born in a very middle-class family. None of the family members had any background in math and science, but I fell in love with the night skies. We didn't have air conditioning, so we would sleep outside on hot summer nights, and I loved it because it gave me an opportunity to just lay in my bed and look at this beautiful dark skies and look at those stars and float up there in my imagination and imagine these, worlds that I would create in my mind, and they would look like anything I wanted them to look like. And I wanted to actually understand what are those shiny objects in space, and that got me interested in astronomy, math, and science, and has been sort of a constant stream in my life. I was so fascinated with becoming an astronaut that I actually drew the picture of my spaceship that will take me to space. So this is what I drew when I was, probably 8, 9 years old. And I went around and showed it to everyone, and I told them this is how I'm going to go to space. And as you can imagine, being a young kid in Iran where there's no space program, telling people you're going to go to space, they all nodded their head and they said, nice, this is great. But I don't think anyone ever believed that it would come true. And this shows you how persistent I am. I not only went to space, but I made sure my rocket looked like the one I drew to prove them that I knew what I was talking about. But it shows you the power of imagination. As human beings, one of the most precious gifts we have, one of the most unique gifts we have, is imagination. As young children, we learn how to use our imagination easily for everything we do. And it's just normal part of our lives. But as we grow older, we become very practical adults and we forget how to use that power. Imagination, what has allowed humanity to imagine things that don't exist and create them. And that power of creativity comes from imagination. So if you take one message home with you today is start exercising your power of imagination, because when you use it for good, it can really make our world better. And imagination is something that starts with a spark of an idea, perhaps something we saw someplace. I was a big Star Trek fan, so I loved watching Star Trek and I was inspired by Star Trek. I also loved science fiction books and Jules Verne and would imagine these worlds that I could go live in. And when you start thinking about the characters, you can start seeing yourself in those characters, and by prop or other means, you can make it come true. As I said, I was Star Trek, so I was fascinated with this equitable world that was portrayed somewhat in Star Trek. So I wasn't a Star Wars fan, actually. I was big on Star Trek because of the world that, everyone had the basic living things they needed. And the point was to find peace and cooperation and collaboration between all the federation of planets. And so when I grew up, I thought, by the time I'm an adult, there will be a Starfleet Academy. I can go apply, and I would love to be a science officer on board Starship Enterprise and travel the universe and make my mark and make my discoveries. But of course, that didn't happen. I came to US when I was 16 years old, and Starfleet Academy was nowhere to be found in the yellow pages. So I ended up in engineering and a different field completely. Nevertheless, my passion drove me back to what I wanted, because as I became very successful, Anna listed a lot of successes I had in business, which I'm very proud of, and accomplished that with my husband as co-founder and many amazing people in my team. My drive with technology was not driven from a desire to be successful financially or in business. It was about creation. It was about the creativity and solving problems. So the engineering school that I went to and the things I learned more than anything else was this problem solving and a desire to learn how things work and how to make new things from them and learn from them. So all the technology companies that I worked on had an eye toward driving the boundaries of technology and using them for good. And eventually, when I got to a point that I had really good success in my business, I had completely carried this passion of space with me throughout my companies, and I wanted to find a way to now focus on that. And when I looked around, still, this was probably 15 years later, I didn't see an opportunity for anyone like me to be able to go to space or experience space or really meaningfully get engaged unless I was part of a government space agency. And getting to a government space agency when the posts are very limited, it's very difficult. So I looked around, and I was fortunate that I had talked about my passion. And this is something I wholeheartedly believe in, that if you are passionate about something, no matter how crazy your idea is, don't be shy about talking about it whenever you get the opportunity, because you never know who's sitting across the table or who's in that room, because they may hear you and they may step up and come and help you. As you know, if you have time, you can sit down again with Anna and talk to her, and you will hear how just being present, being in presence of others and talking about something and listening to other people, she's been able to create this amazing group of people here at this conference. So for me, it was Peter Diamandis who had come up with an idea of a prize, a competition to open up the commercial space for everyone, and couldn't find anyone to fund the program for him. And he reads about me as someone who wants to go to space and interested to do a suborbital flight, decides to hunt me down and find me and talk to me. And he did, and I'm glad he did, because soon after the first meeting, when he told me about the concept of a competition that $10 million will bring people from all over the world to build spaceships in their garages without the help of the government and to take people to space. Like, now you can imagine, just go back 15, even more than 15, 20, 25 years ago. Imagine someone would be going, and this is before SpaceX and Blue Origin and all these things. Someone going around and saying, I want people to build spaceship in their garages and take people to space. Probably they will think they're crazy. But he found me, and I didn't think it's a crazy idea. I was an entrepreneur, and I'm like, wow, this means that you're de-risking it. You don't have to even pay the price until someone actually builds a spaceship and goes to space. You know, this is amazing. This is a fantastic idea. So my family and I signed up, and we became sponsors. And the prize attracted 26 teams from 7 countries who competed for the prize, and a team from Mojave, Bert Rutan, with this design, Spaceship One, is the team that actually won the prize. And Spaceship One is actually in Air and Space Museum, and next to Spirit of San Luis, which is the prize that it was modeled, the Ortiq Prize that inspired Lindbergh to fly. And because of that, I'm always happy when I go to DC and I get to go to the museum and say, oh, we played a small role in making this happen. Since the model of the prize worked and we saw how $10 million brought $100 million in investment and inspired a new group of entrepreneurs around the globe and brought in policy changes that opened up the whole space market, we decided to apply this to solve other grand challenges. So since early days, I've been serving on the board of XPRIZE, and recently, 9 months ago, I joined full-time as the new CEO and trying to take it to the next level. But since then, we've done prizes in health of oceans and ocean discovery, in education, in health and bringing health to the remote parts of the world. We just awarded our Global Learning X Prize, which was a tablet Android-based solution to teach kids reading, writing, and basic arithmetics for children who don't have access to school and qualified teachers. We've done an ocean discovery for mapping of the ocean floors, and an adult literacy prize that we awarded. And we have 3 active prizes. The reason I'm putting them up there is if there's students in the audience, or actually you don't have to be student. We have retired scientists, we have junior high school students, all competing for the prizes. So we have an IBM Watson, which is using AI and machine learning for good. We have a carbon capture prize, and also an Avatar X Prize that allows someone to, by wearing some suit or haptics, be able to occupy a robotic body and do a lot of things that they want to do remotely. One thing that I wanted to maybe touch on a little bit more, because my passion is space, is and the second prize we did in space, which was Google Lunar X Prize, and this was for an unmanned mission to the moon. The prize expired, but what was very interesting is people continued to compete even though the prize wasn't there. So the prize starts things going, but then the passion is what fuels the work that goes on beyond the prize. And the first commercial team from Israel landed, they landed in multiple pieces, not in one piece, but nevertheless they landed on the surface of the moon, which was the first. And there are 3 other teams that are continuing to try to make it to the moon. So what I want to do maybe a little bit is what excites me about what's happening in space. And a lot of the work that's happening today was sort of fueled by all the changes that were made possible by the prize we did. So Virgin Galactic is a company that was launched by Richard Branson, and basically they contracted the winners of the Ansari X Prize and created this new company, and they have started flying their first semi-commercial passenger, but they're going to start flying passengers this year. You've heard of Elon Musk and SpaceX, and they have achieved amazing, reusable rocketry that has reduced the cost of access to space, and they will be flying the Dragon capsule with astronauts to space station soon. Blue Origin with Jeff Bezos, similarly, they have aspirations to carry passengers to space station and beyond. Bob Piccolo is another entrepreneur. He has a chain of hotels. And he's now, through technology he contracted from NASA, created the Genesis project, which is sort of an orbiting station, inflatable station around our orbit. And there are also advancements around, new propulsion system. For example, you hear people talking about a trip to Mars could take many years, and there's an engine that came from research at NASA called the Vazmir engine, and a commercial group is now trying to use and develop and advance this engine, and the first successful test firing was done last year. But a future in space could be very interesting because a lot of exponential technology things that are shaping our lives is also changing how we go to space, how we would get there, how we would live in space, and how we would explore space. So augmentation is something that you've heard about Google glasses, but that technology and VR and AR technology are advancing very rapidly. And whether it's virtual reality or augmented reality will be playing a big role in training, but also in the way that we would experience the environment here on Earth and also in space. A lot of augmentation also happens through robotics and nanotechnology that will be collaborating with humans. At this point in time, we had robots that we would work with, but also now we have robotic maybe suits that we can wear, that we can do things that our body normally won't be able to do. Or it can also be used, a lot of technology that are developed in space are actually also helping us here on Earth. A lot of the same technologies are helping people to gain abilities that may have lost due to an accident or genetically or other ways. Once we are actually able to reduce the cost and increase the cost of frequency of travel to space, we would want to stay there. You've heard about another moon mission and Mars mission, and when we go to these places, this time is not to go and visit, but to stay. In order to stay, we can carry everything with us up there, and the environment is very different than our planet. So additive manufacturing and 3D printing will play a big role in space. So you have already you have 3D food. I have been to conferences where many of the food items were 3D printed. I haven't tried the chocolate yet, but I'm looking forward to that. There are 2 3D printers on board the space station already made by a company called Made in Space, and they are manufacturing little parts and tools and trying things out already that in future will become a normal part of being in space. Before that, if something broke, they had to wait until the next mission, actually the next Soyuz would carry the item to station. Now if it's a small piece, they can actually just print it on the station, and then they can recycle it. The next spacesuit, actually, a lot of the parts and pieces of it will be 3D printed. So 3D printing, it's faster, but also can be personalized. So when you heard about the recent problem with the spacewalk, when they wanted to have all female crew doing the spacewalk and the suit not fitting them is because there are only a few parts that they put together for the spacesuit, and there are only a small quantity of them available or ever manufactured. But with this type of technology, then people can have their own custom-made suits and recycle them and redo them again. Also, we are going to use 3D printing in creating our habitats on the surface of the moon or Mars. There was a competition that NASA hosted for $2.5 million for a 3D printed habitat on Mars. This is the winning design for that, actually.
Is it actually there?
It's not there, but the design won the prize, and they imagine when they will actually have the mission to Mars that they would use this type of technologies to create something there versus building something here and carrying it, which is harder to do. So I talked about space, but I also mentioned that how a lot of times space technology helps us here on Earth. So to give you some ideas of how commercialization of space can benefit humanity here on Earth, one project that I'm particularly excited about is space solar-powered satellites. And that's basically, we've used solar panels here on Earth. They're not as efficient as we want them because we have the night and day cycle and weather storms. We've used solar satellites and in space all the time for our satellites, for our space station. So and we've been able to beam laser beams and other things to the surface of Earth. So putting all technologies together will allow us potentially to capture the energy of the sun in space with maximum efficiency all the time, and then beam that down to a distribution center here on Earth and be able to power our cities. There's still some technological advancement that is required there, but this is one of the projects that actually NASA is designing and potentially will bring unlimited amount of energy from the sun to us. Also, a lot of technologies have come together to make it possible for satellites to shrink. So from an imaging and sensing perspective, which is giving us greater information about our planet and how our planet is changing and how we can actually do something about it and monitor it. So as these technologies, and I didn't even go into biotech and other areas of genomics that is really incredibly advancing human society combined with AI. But what I wanted to mention here is, because I spend a lot of time in circles where a lot of these technologies are discussed, and as you can imagine, because the rate of change is so fast, it's not linear, it's hard to predict. So when I talk about 30 linear steps or 30 steps, I can imagine that I would end up probably to that corner of the room if I take 30 steps from here. But if I tell you that I took 30 exponential steps, your mind can't imagine where I would end up. And I have to tell you, that would mean that I went around the globe, around the equator, 26 times. So that's why our mind can grasp and imagine and predict, more importantly, what happens when things change exponentially. And this is what's happening today, not only in each field, everything's working, moving exponentially, but they're coming together and crossing domains, which makes it even more impossible to predict. And what happens when we can't control or predict things? Our first reaction is fear. We get scared, we imagine the worst, and we want to stop them. But I am here to tell you that as much as technology can, in people's imagination, be destructive, we can also use our imagination to use them for good. Because technology, at the end of the day, is a tool. Imagine the first person who invented a knife. I don't know what they used it for, but I'm sure it was a tool to create something. And today a knife can take a life, or in the hand of a surgeon can actually save a life. So we can't let our fears stop us from using technology, because we can actually build the future we want by imagining it and by using these tools to create it. I had the opportunity to be in many amazing companies, in many amazing groups. I have come from a country where a space program didn't exist, where I was not rich, I didn't have any money, and I've been able to do something that only about 550 people in the entire world have been able to do, and go to International Space Station. But I have to tell you also, you look in this picture, this is usually what my world looked like. So I'm the only woman in this group. This is the people that I trained with, and I spent about a year in Moscow training with. And when I stepped off that car into the training facility, I have to tell you, no one wanted me there. They did not want me there. They tried their very best to discourage me from continuing the program. And when I went to my first engineering class, I was one of, I think, 2 women in the class. At my work, I was the only woman in my group. As a female CEO going and trying to pitch for funding for my company, I had a lot of doors slammed on me because they didn't believe that I was smart enough or worthy of it or knew what I was doing. And I'm sure everyone, felt later that they made a mistake. But because the ones that did invest in me, they were very happy with their investment. But I'm telling you this to just point out that sometimes we are in difficult situations. Sometimes things are not fair. And we have to just, if it's important enough cause that we're doing, if our work is important enough, we'll find the energy and the way to push through those barriers. And the barriers come in different forms and shapes, and mine may not be the same as yours, but finding that energy to push through those barriers is important, because sometimes we may be the first one to push that door open, but the good thing is usually we leave the door open for others to follow. And I was, the story of Anna is something that I didn't plan it, I didn't write it. What happened is I went to a room like this at Carnegie and I gave a talk similar to this. There was a young lady in the audience named Anna who heard about what I talked about and was inspired. And that helped her make some decisions later that led to this conference. Now I am one of those people who believe that the universe will help conspire to help you when you have a passion. And many years later, without anything that I did or she did, we were put back together through Brooke Owens Fellowship. And I happened to be selected as her mentor. And then we were reconnected and I learned about the story. So, and then she invited me to this conference and I said, of course I have to come. So this is what happens when you're passionate. So when I went to Space Station, and before I went there, I had to go through a lot of training. It helped me learn a lot of things about myself, things that perhaps I was scared to do, or that I didn't know how to do, that I didn't even know if I could do or not. I went through the entire training program. Every time I walked in the room, I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish this test or pass this test. But I found the courage to try, and that's the most important thing, the courage to try. Because if you don't even try, you will never know what you're capable of. And you will be surprised when you push yourself. There are things you can do that you never imagined you could do. And the training taught a lot of things to me. All those people who didn't want me part of the program became my best friends at the end. I spent 3 days on board the ship in Sevastopol in Black Sea doing survival training. And I walked away from that ship. I'm like, I didn't know if I could do it. And I walked away surprised at myself, what I could achieve. And the fact that, despite their superstition that they had in Russia, where women on ships are supposed to be bad luck, they allowed me on that ship, and at the end when I left, they were celebrating the accomplishment. So I continued to go around the world, and continue to talk to especially young students, young female students, like young male students, people who are just maybe in areas where they don't have the opportunities. This is Campus Brazil. You can see another one of the speakers in this picture who does similar work around the world with Astronomers Without Borders, Mike Simon, and talking about how space can bring us together. And you know, I love to do this because when someone can see the story of another woman, another young man, another person with certain disabilities achieving great achievements, that inspires them and that opens door for them to go after it. And I hope that we'll have many, many young scientists that will, you know, perhaps years from now tell their stories that they were here amongst the 50 students we have here that were inspired by these stories. And maybe one day we will have people who have even lost their homes and have big dreams and will stand on this stage one day and tell you their stories of achieving great things. So with that, I just want to share a poem that I love, and I love to close with this poem, and then show you a video of my trip to space station, and then I'll be available to answer your questions. So this is a poem by Karen Raven, and one that I love. Perhaps I will switch it later with one of Anna's poems. But her poem says, "Only as high as I reach can I grow. Only as far as I seek can I go. Only as deep as I look can I see. And only as much as I dream can I be." So I do hope that you dream and dream big, and I do hope that all your dreams come true. Thank you.
It was something that I wanted to experience for myself. The mystery and the unknown out there always have been drawing me to space. The universe is calling me.
I'm here at the Mojave Spaceport with Anusha Ansari, the title sponsor of the Ansari X Prize. Congratulations on today's flight.
I'm not afraid of risk. This is a risk worth taking, and having the view we saw today on the monitors of Spaceship One, just an experience that's out of this world, and I would do anything, give my life to experience it.
So this is one thing they do for Soyuz is they build a seat liner to protect you when you land, so it's casted to your body, so they're making a seat liner here. And this is the centrifuge training area. So we did a 9G run, which makes it very difficult to breathe. So you can see in my face when you see it. This is the centrifuge training. This is part of the survival training. And this is the space station simulation area. This is the zero-G training. I had to learn Russian. And these are my crewmates at the final examination. Michael Lopez Alegria and Mikhail Turin. This is the morning of the flight. We went through the preparation and then asked permission to board and start our mission. And then we drove a bus to the rocket and rode a small elevator up to the top of the rocket. So the capsule sits on top of the rocket, and here shortly, so shortly here the countdown starts. It's countdown. It takes somewhere between 15 to 20 minutes to get to orbit. As you can see, my family was very worried, but I was super excited inside the capsule. So here my mom thought that actually I blew up because of the plume she saw, and I explained, no, the first stage separation just happened. This is after 2 days. So I spent 2 days on board the capsule, and then after 2 days of chasing the space station and getting to the right orbit, we docked with the space station. There were 3 other crew members on board the station, 1 Russian, 1 American, and 1 from Germany with the European Space Agency.
For the first time, I would see the Earth as a really beautiful, glowing blue glow in the background of the universe.
So when you're in space, one thing that's very interesting is because you're floating and you're in weightlessness, you can make use of the entire space. Imagine if you were floating in this conference room and you could use the entire space. So floor, ceilings, walls doesn't have meaning. It changes with your orientation. So you can see equipment and everything, all over the place. So you can imagine, as I have my camera and I'm flying through the space station, you can imagine this is you flying through the space station. So this is the Russian segment. This was the first part of the space station that was launched. And this is also the space, this is a Russian segment, but it's also the sort of the brain of the space station. A lot of the operation goes through this. They're repairing a system that makes oxygen on board the space station. We talk about circular economy, and everything is recycled on board space station.
Back right here, right by the best view from the world. Let's see, sort of like a sack. Just hop in there, or if you can call it hop and float in there.
Light? Yeah, you see, I do this. So for a few minutes, I listen to music, and then I start getting curious about what's out there. And I come out here and sort of put myself here and watch this beautiful view outside and enjoy myself. And then sometimes it's during the daytime, like now, and I can see the clouds, the earth rotating by. I see the curvature right there.
The views from space station is amazing. From up here, everything's really peaceful, and you can't see the borders, you can't see different race, different religions. All you see is just one Earth, very peaceful and beautiful, rotating. And I think that's part of the reason I wish more and more people will be able to experience this firsthand, because talking to the astronauts and cosmonauts, they have a different perspective on life and how important it is for us to do everything in our power to preserve the only home we have in the universe.
So this is the kitchen and dining room on board space station. There's no refrigerator on board, so everything is either canned or freeze-dried, and you add water to it. I was making oatmeal there. And space station is the only place that is totally fine to play with your food.
It's hard not to, probably.
Yeah. As you can see, water floats, doesn't flow. There are no showers on board. This is how you play Pac-Man on station. You chase M&Ms around. Because you lose bone density and muscle mass, you have to exercise 2 hours on the station. The equipment looks different. As you can see, there are no showers, so this is how you would clean. We took turns cleaning the station. So I had an amazing time on the station, and this is the last day that I'm coming back. So you can see on my face I'm not very happy.
Can you still see us? Yes, we can still see you. And we're sitting down here before a trip. We're traveling. Say hi to everybody in Annecy, Alaska. I can't have them take it off. Thank you. We have wiped everything.
So the 2 crewmates I flew with, they stayed to start their 6-month mission, and the 2 crewmates who had completed their 6 months returned back to Earth with me. This is the, we detached here, and probably within an hour or so, we were back on Earth, an hour and a half ago. This is the last part of the landing, the last stage of the parachute. And we landed in Kazakhstan, in Astana, near Astana, and you land on the ground. So you're very disoriented when you land, so they actually help you out of the capsule. You can see everything is burned and nothing is reusable. So when you land, because you've been in microgravity, this is a surprise visitor. My husband came actually. But your body is weak, so you can't stand up on your own, so they help you and they make sure that you gain your footing before they let you stand
It's
up.
hard to describe the satisfaction you get by seeing something that you longed for so long, you worked so hard. It's becoming a reality.
So this is part of the ceremony. You wear the traditional Kazakh clothes. They actually gave my husband honorary garment too, and gave him a whip
I don't have
too.
any plans to call this the final destination for myself and to basically retire from working as space industry. I look at it as just one of the steps that I'm taking in a long journey, and my ultimate goal will be to bring this experience and the ability to fly to space to more and more people.
So I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. So I think we have time for Q&A.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. So we do have time for some questions. I just want to take a moment to thank Anusha so much for traveling all the way out from Los Angeles to be here with us today and for sharing her time, her experience, and her insight and her amazing stories. Let's give one more round of applause. So we do have time for Q&A, and first we have a few special questions from the students of Parkmore Elementary School. Hello, Parkmore. So we have a group of 50 Columbus 2nd to 5th graders who submitted their questions ahead of time, and we've got 4 selected questions that will be asked to Anusha now. So we have our microphone here. So let's get started.
Before you ask your question, I have a question. How many want to go to space? Ah, wonderful. Good, 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 good. We have all future astronauts here.
What made you want to become a space ranger?
So, Space Ranger sounds good too. So I wanted to actually learn more about the stars, and I felt by experiencing them and actually going to space, it will allow me to understand and study the universe better. So that was why I wanted to go to space.
What do people eat in space, and how do you drink out of it? How is it dinner time? When it's dark.
So that's a good question. So in terms of food, you saw a little bit of it. As I said, there's no refrigerator, so you have to have food that can last a long time. So it's either canned or freeze-dried in special packaging. And then powdered milk or powdered tang, you can add water to drinks or food and rehydrate it. And water, you saw also, you have to be careful the way you drink it, and you can have fun with it actually. But about when it's dark or when it's light, so you orbit the Earth every 90 minutes. So what that means is every 90 minutes you see a sunrise and a sunset. So you can't actually tell time by looking at whether it's dark or light, because every hour and a half you go through a cycle of day and night, which means that you look at the clock on the wall that is usually tuned to synchronize to the time in London, the Greenwich Mean Time, and that's how you would tell what time it is. But I can tell you, it was really, really great to be able to look out the window and see so many sunrises and sunsets, and they all look beautiful.
When you have been in space for a while, how does your body feel upon returning to Earth, and how long does it take to readjust?
A very good question too. So when you're in space, your body goes through a lot of changes. Some of the changes are things that I actually was part of an experiment with European Space Agency to study. So first of all, the fluid in your body shifts up. So you know our heart pumps and makes our blood circulate, and the gravity plays a role in this function. When you're in weightlessness, that gets disrupted a little bit, so you get more fluid in your face. So if you see astronauts the first few days especially, you see their faces puffy, you feel sinus pressure. The other thing that happens, your spine stretches, so I was actually 2 inches taller in space. Unfortunately, I lost it when I came back. But that's another thing that happens. While it was fun to be taller, it puts a strain on your back, lower back, so you feel some pain the first few days. Your vestibular system gets impacted, so that's why people feel like motion sickness, like when you're on a boat, you feel motion sickness for the first few days until again your body adjusts. But we have an amazing body and adjusts very rapidly to the new environment. When you come back, depending on how long you've been in space, it takes that much longer for you to adjust. So roughly for me, I spent about 11 days, so within a day and a half, I was okay. Mostly your body becomes lazy in space because you don't have to fight gravity. We do everything without noticing. We apply a lot of force to walk, to stand up, to sit down, all these things. Where in space, you're in weightlessness environment, microgravity, so you don't have to do this, so your body becomes lazy. So when I came back, actually, when I was just right after I came out of the capsule, I felt like I was sinking into the ground. I felt so heavy, and I felt like I was wearing a lead suit over my body. So for example, I wanted to lift my arm, and I would look at my arm, and it felt like such a difficult task to just lift it up, and so for the first day or so, it just felt weird. But then again, I adjusted, and it was great.
How do you move the ship if asteroids are on a collision course with the asteroids?
Asteroids, oh, good question. So there's not a lot of fuel on the station, but the station has these thrusters, so it can just fire those thrusters, the little engines, a little bit, and then course correct to go to a higher orbit or to a lower orbit. And when you just adjust a little bit, then you continue going in that direction until you change direction again through another thruster. If you have to abandon the station, the Soyuz capsule, the capsule I flew in, is also the escape capsules. And you will get into your capsule, and I don't know if you've seen the movie Gravity, how Sandra Bullock got back, so that's pretty much the same thing. You get into your capsule, you push that button, and that capsule basically heads straight down to Earth. It will be a very, very rough ride getting down. But it will get you down and back to Earth.
Fantastic. So thank you to our Parkmore students for submitting your questions. And now we'd like to give a round of applause for Parkmore. And now we're going to open up the questions to the floor. So we'll have some runners with mics come to you. So if you have a question, just raise your hand, and our runners will come out to answer.
Hi. One question. You said that when you were up in the rocket that there were already 3 people, and that when you left, you and 3 other people, but you only mentioned that there were 2 people staying. What happened to the final person?
So there were 3 people on station, and the three people who went up there, one of them was me. So when I left, there were three people left on the station and two came back with me.
Okay, you just mentioned that you were just saying two were going stay for the 6 months, and you didn't say what happened to the last person.
Oh, the last person.
Confused.
Yeah, so the last person had not completed. So one person remained the same. So when I went up, the German astronaut that was up there, when I came back, he stayed there. So that remained the same.
Okay.
Yes, how does re-entry feel?
So good question. So re-entry was one of the toughest part of the trip. So when you're in the capsule and it starts heading down, it almost feels like, let me say goodbye to all the students. Have fun at school. Bye. Thank you for coming. So when you come down, it's like a shooting star. If someone was watching our return, it looked like a shooting star. So it gets very, very hot inside the capsule. I saw the plasma outside the window, and then the parachute has 3 stages. The first one, when it opens, is really because you're going so fast, and the first parachute is trying to stop you. You're sort of dangling at the end of the parachute and going in all directions. So it's very disorienting, and that happens, a few times until you land. And then the landing, there are thrusters that fire that's supposed to really slow you down, but you're going so fast, even the thrusters doesn't slow you down enough. So you feel really a big impact when you hit the earth. So I had my seat belts, and you could, I had bruises from the seat belt from the impact. But other than that, thankfully my landing was pretty normal and didn't go wrong. If you go through so on a normal landing you do 4.5 Gs, maybe 5. On a emergency landing you could go up to 12 Gs, which is not comfortable at all.
Okay, so as someone who's blind and still has the mind of a little kid inside, I still definitely want to go to space one day, and I definitely think that it's possible, but I was wondering, as someone who has, what barriers you think there might be for there to be a blind astronaut or cosmonaut?
So I think I'm trying to think of my training or anything I did on the station. So I don't think there's anything special in space that would be different than working in any normal work environment here on Earth, because pretty much you're basically using computers, so there are enough technologies and tools that can make any of the equipment that are on station accessible to someone who has lost their sight. So I think that is possible. There's a lot of new technologies through actually helping with implants that would allow some part of the vision to be restored. That can be a technology used in the future. And probably moving around would be easier, because here if you're walking and you happen to hit an obstacle, that probably it's a harder collision than if it would be in space, because you're floating and you can just float around and lightly touch something and then move to a different direction. So if anything, it may be easier in space.
Hi. So I kind of wanted to follow up with that. You spoke of being excluded, even unwanted sometimes as a woman, and I actually had the chance to attend Space Camp in Huntsville, Alabama twice. And the interesting thing about Space Camp is that everything is already accessible. So they brailled, the ISS control panels, that they simulated the orbiter, all the mission control checklists. And I went probably 7 or 8 years ago at this point, and you spoke a lot about the privatized space industry and all the technology that's being evolved to be better. Mm-hmm. Do you think there's a future in privatized, disability space as a kind of a subset of all of this?
I definitely hope so, and I'm happy to actually be a voice and advocate for it. One thing that I've said, and I don't know if it's appropriate or not, but I've never been known for being politically correct. So, the mission to Mars is very long. A lot of the places we want to visit will take a long time. One of the biggest impact that, for example, space has on our body is we're going to start losing muscle and bone. And it's hard to, we haven't figured out a way to stop that. So one thing I've been talking to people about is, when we're selecting astronauts, people who may have lost use of their limbs may actually be perfect astronauts for that type of environment because they already know how to function and do things without heavy use of muscle and those limbs. And these long duration missions, may be perfect for us to actually open up the astronaut selection to a wider range of, people who are interested to experience space. In other areas, I can imagine that because people have this notion of space is dangerous, which it is dangerous, but I think if someone wants to experience space as a private astronaut especially, they can choose to, and all we need to do as a private industry is to make it accessible and available. And the rest of the decision should be made up to the person who wants to do it. So I'm happy to advocate for it. And as you said, in Alabama, they already know how to make everything accessible. And it's a very close duplicate of the shuttle, and the Soyuz is even less sophisticated, and the space station is built on the same model. So we already know how to do it. We just need to create it. And if anyone would make it happen, would be, I think, the private group.
I want to share we have time for 2 more questions. So we have one back here.
Hi, this is Star. Thanks so much for coming and speaking. Wanted to know about when you are doing the testing and you're doing the spinning, right, because we're all concerned. Are there going to be times when you did maybe have some upset stomachs in the polite way of saying
absolutely.
that? And how many times is that allowed? Like, what is your criteria for correction? Yeah, thank you.
So there are a couple of things. One is the parabolic flight that the NASA astronaut call it the vomit comet. So that's one exercise that will make you not feel well, and that's the same thing happens to you again because of your vestibular system on space station. So they teach you techniques to sort of move slowly when you turn your entire body and not turn your head. But I have to tell you, when I was in the capsule and the first time that they said you can open your seatbelt and I floated up, and I was like, oh my God, I'm floating, I'm in space. And I looked out the window and I saw Earth, and I was so excited. I started doing somersaults. I went up, hit my head hard because I didn't know how to move in microgravity, and I did all the things I wasn't supposed to. So I got very sick. So for a day and a half I was sick, and I took motion sickness medication, which made me drowsy and all that. And in the training I didn't get sick, which surprised the trainers. But I was like, I'm not going to give them the satisfaction of getting sick. If I have swallowed, I'll swallow it. But I was trying to do these things in my head to distract myself. So I was doing the multiplication table. I was singing songs in my head, doing things to just distract myself so I wouldn't get sick. But it is the reason they do these trainings is to make you understand and then over time increase your tolerance.
Thank you.
Back there?
Who was the American that was on the space station at the same time you were, and how many days were you up there?
So I was up there, I was in space 11 days, 9 days was on the space station. And inside the capsule that I went up, Michael Lopez Alegria, who is a Spanish-American astronaut, NASA astronaut, he was with me. And then on the station, Jeff Williams was the other American astronaut on board the space station, so I flew back with Jeff Williams. Yeah, I've been to most of the different NASA facilities. I trained in Houston for some time. The other person that I was very, very, very lucky to train with and trained most of my time with her was Peggy Whitson. And Peggy was the first female commander of the space station, so I had the fortune of training with her.
All right, so that's all the questions we have time for today, unfortunately. So let's thank Anusha again for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.